All right, let's talk about all the information you've been receiving. Let's kind of rewind the tape. Let's go back to the beginning. When you first heard of Plexus, and maybe even walked through the door this morning, you didn't know what you didn't know. In other words, as you're sitting through the sessions, you were like, I didn't know that about the product. Really? Is that how you do prospecting? Wow, is that how you use social media? This morning, you were unconsciously incompetent. Now, unconsciously means you weren't thinking about it. You didn't know what you didn't know. In other words, you weren't aware of what you didn't have or didn't know. And so this is probably where you started out. But as you went through these sessions, you now became conscious of what you didn't know. You became consciously incompetent. Right? In other words, you're conscious of what you don't know and how much more you need to grow, how much more you need to learn. Not a bad place to be. This is all part of the process. As you start working with the product, using the product, talking to other people, being coached, being mentored by other people, listening to their stories, then kind of applying some of those things to what you do, you're going to become consciously competent. In other words, you're going to be very aware of what you need to say, what you need to do. In other words, you're going to be consciously competent. But that isn't good enough. To really be the best of the best in selling, in sharing, you have to get to the next level. And that is when the information flows from you in such a way that it becomes very natural. Like breathing, you just talk about it. In fact, you're not even thinking about the information because you're so comfortable about talking about the product, you're so comfortable with the process, and you know how to use all the tools. At that point, you've reached the unconscious competent. That means unconscious, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You are competent. So it's okay right now if you're feeling a sense of plexus vertigo. That's a cool phrase. Where there's too much information, right? You're like, I don't know how I apply this. There's too many moving pieces. That's okay. You're probably right here. You're conscious of what you don't know, and that's okay. Through practice, through, again, role-playing with others, through listening to other people do the calls, you're going to learn, and you're going to move to the next level and finally reach that level where you're very comfortable, and that's okay. But what happens when you do make the calls or when you do the presentations and they don't go well? I want to give you a model to have in your head to keep you moving forward so you don't get discouraged. All right, I know right now you have a lot of information swimming through your head. So what I want to do is now kind of structure this as we send you out into the world to do your thing, right? If you don't know what that is, ask somebody. But I want to send you out there prepared, ready to do your thing. In other words, succeed. The first thing I want to talk about is something that's included in the toolkit, and I'm glad they included this. It's the 20-60-20 rule. I mentioned this last time I spoke at Plexus, and one of the things I want to do is put an emphasis on what this really means. This was a study done by the Wharton School of Business, right? And what they found is something interesting, that there's 3 types of buyers in the market. And there's breaking up in 20-60-20 pretty much. The top 20% here, this 20% here, these are people who are convinced. These are people who are convinced that they're right and you're wrong. Have you ever met those? Have you ever met those people who are like, no matter what you say, like, I knew that, I don't need that. You know, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, they're not gonna buy from you. So what do? Listen carefully. Walk away. Just walk away. Once you sense that these are the top 20% that are never gonna buy from you, walk away. Let them go. You don't need to talk to them. And you can identify these people. These are people, well, let me think about it. Let me get back to you. Well, I've tried something else. Well, that's not as good as I thought it was going to be. I know because I've done my research, so I know better. Again, these are people you just go, I'm done. Move on to the next one. These are people that will always waste your time. They'll always ask you for information, more information. They'll think about it. Let me get back to you. Can we get together again and talk about it some more? Again, you'll have to decide if these people fall into that 20%. If they're convinced that they know more than you and that their way is best compared to yours, walk away. They'll just frustrate you, okay? Done with them. At the other end of the spectrum, though, is the other 20% who are basically concerned. These are people who might have weight issues, who have wellness issues, and maybe have some wealth issues needing to generate more money. These are people that if you just present the information, you talk about Plexus, the product, in the right way, again, laying everything out so they understand it and it flows naturally from you, these people will buy. These are the people that will always buy. You know, they'll make a decision right there on the spot. Love these people. We love those people. They're concerned. They already have a sense of urgency. That's why they're concerned. They need to lose weight. They need to basically get better physically. That's why they're focused on wellness. Or they need a second income. They need to generate money. They need wealth. They're concerned that they're not ready for retirement, or they're not going to be physically fit when they do retire. So these are the best people to find. People who are now concerned, who have that sense of urgency. But the real business, where you're going to make your money, is that 60% in the middle. The complacent people. Yes, the complacent people. These are people who want to do something, but never get around to doing it. I want to do something, but I never get around to doing it. It reminds me of the hound dog story I often tell. I'm going to tell you too again. I'm going to say it one more time. The story goes like this. There's a man walking down a lonely road. In the distance, he sees a farmhouse, right? And as he approaches the farmhouse, he wants to get a drink of water. He sees an old man just sitting there on the rocking chair, just rocking back and forth, whittling the stick, minding his own business. Right next to that old man is a big old nasty hound dog going, brrr, you know, just whining, woo, right there. So now the stranger approaches the old man on the porch and asks the old man for a drink of water. Old man says, of course, walks inside. And as the old man's getting a drink of water, all this stranger sees is this dog laying down going, brrr, you know. So he doesn't know what to think of this. Well, the old man finally comes back with a glass of water, hands it to the stranger. They have a polite conversation. But in the background, all you hear is this howling, right? Finally, the stranger can't take it anymore. Asks the old man, excuse me, sir, but what's wrong with your dog? Old man looks at the dog, looks at the stranger, says, my dog is laying on a tack. The stranger doesn't know what to think of that. Keep having polite conversation, but in the background, it's just annoying because all you hear is that, right? Finally, the stranger said, that's it, I'm going to ask. So he asks the old man, says, excuse me, sir, but if your dog is laying on a tack, why does it get up? Old man looks at the dog again, looks back at the stranger, says, son, you really don't understand. The tack hurts the dog, but not enough to make him want to get up and do something about it. Now, I've always loved that story because those are people who are always whining. You know, we just came off the Christmas holidays, right? You probably ran into your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, a friend, and they're whining about, my job isn't good enough. I really don't feel well all the time. I don't make enough money. They won't give me a raise. That's all they're doing is they're whining. And in your mind, you're saying, well, all you got to do is get up and do something about it. That's the same here. This 60%, these are people who know they need to do something, and all you always hear from them is whining. It is your job, if you want to sell to them, is to create that sense of urgency. You need to grow that tack, make it more painful. You need to make the pain of the same greater than the pain of the change. Let me say it again. You need to make the pain of the same greater than the pain of the change. In other words, you need to emphasize what will happen if they continue on this course, if they don't do anything, if they don't take action. What will happen to your weight? What will happen to your physical being, your wellness? What will happen to your financial situation if you don't take action? The more you can drive that point home, the bigger the tag gets, and then you make them get up and do something about it. So our job in selling, in sharing, is to move these complacent people over to the concern zone. Create that sense of urgency. Get the idea? Find ways of doing that. Talk to people around you. Ask them, how do you do it? How do you get people to move, to get up and do something? That's the trick if you want people to move into this zone, okay? Second, in the toolkit, you also see blocking objections. Now, I have a whole video series online, but what they've done with the toolkit, a lot of great stuff in there, right? They've used it. Blocking objections is key. On my website or on YouTube, you'll see some videos I have that explains the psychology of why blocking objections work. Now, the information in your toolkit is enough to really get you going. But keep in mind, blocking objections is key. Let me say it again. Blocking objections is key. You just can't let something go by hoping somebody won't bring it up. People are going to have basic questions. You might as well address them head on. Block the objections before they say something. Because when you raise the objection, you control the conversation. Let me say it again. When you raise the objection, you control the conversation. If they raise the objection, now you find yourself defending yourself and explaining yourself. And guess what? That sale just went down in terms of probability, whether you'll close it or not. So again, learn to block objections. Learn to deal with the issues head on. Don't hide from them. If there's an elephant in the room, deal with the elephant. Raise those objections, okay? Third, I'm going to give you a formula. In general, you got the toolkit. But in your mind, I want you to keep this 3-step process I always use in selling. Okay, it's a basic process and it really goes well with your sales process and toolkit. The first E stands for empathize. Empathize with the person you're talking to. Now, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. I've mentioned this in the past. Sympathy is, for example, let me give you a visual example so you'll never forget. You're standing on the deck of a boat, somebody comes by, they're wobbling, they go over to the banister and they start throwing up, right? Blech. I know, what a visual, right? And you look at that person from back here and you go, wow, that must hurt. That's sympathy. Now, if you went over to the banister and threw up with them, that's empathy. Yeah, so what customers want you to do is to throw up with them. Great visual, right? Joking aside, again, throwing up with the customer basically means you feel their pain. You feel their struggles. You understand what they're going through. If they have weight issues, you can relate. Either you're going through it, you've gone through it, or you know somebody who has gone through it. If they're talking about some wellness issues, again, you know somebody or maybe you've gone through it. Again, connect with them at that level. If it's a financial thing, wealth side, again, talk about that as well. People want to know that you understand them, okay? So again, empathize with the person you're talking to. That's why we get back to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, just listen, just again, ask a lot of questions, but do a lot of listening, okay? Then we go to E, educate. Yes, this is key. What you want to do is you want to educate people. When I say educate, I want you to give them information. But beyond information, I need you to give them insight. Here's my definition of insight. Information beyond the obvious. Oh, what a definition. Information beyond the obvious. Give them something they don't even know about. Tell them something they didn't expect to hear. Make them go, what? I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. That's insight. And I'm sure as you went through the session, you're like, I didn't know that. That was insight. Really? It works like that? I didn't know that. That's insight. That's what your customers want. When you can educate your customers like that, give them information beyond the obvious, insight, now you're helping them make the decision. This is part of the customer experience. Remember, it's not really about price. It's not really about branding. It's not really about the service. All these three are important. The brand is important. Plexus is a well-known brand. Great. Pricing, good pricing, great. Service and support, good. But what they're finding out that these three are not the dominant reasons people buy. What they're finding is that the customer experience is what's really making it happen. That's where you come in. That's what you say, how you say, the information you provide, the insight you provide is what's going to make the customer experience. You're going to help them make decisions. You're going to help them narrow down their choices. Maybe say, you know what, start with this, and then we'll move on to that. Or if you want to join the program because of wealth, here's how I can mentor you, coach you, walk you through the process using our new toolkit. All this is part of the education process. So if you could empathize with people and then educate them in such a way to give them insight, information beyond the obvious, help them make decisions, help them avoid making bad decisions, clarify things for them, then you're enhancing the customer experience. And all that ties in with the Plexus price, the Plexus brand, and the service and support. Get the idea? Last but not least is my favorite, that if you've empathized with your customer and you've educated them, provided that insight, information beyond the obvious, yeah, I know, I keep repeating that because I really want you to get it. Then the last part is empower them to make a decision. In other words, today you can't pressure people into making a decision. But I think if you empathize with them, understand them, provide them the education, give them the information they want in a way that they can understand it, then you just empower them and just invite them to be part of your team. And that will generate the money you want. Get the idea? That's what sharing is. See, it's not really selling. There's no hard closes. You don't have to memorize 101 sales close. It's really about if you've empathized, you've connected. If you've also educated them, given them the information they need to make an educated decision, you've clarified things, because a confused mind will never make a decision. But if you've clarified things for them because you know the product, because you've gone through the courses, you've studied the toolkit, then empowering them to make a decision is all about nudging, not pushing, as I always say. Last but not least, be a torpedo. This is my analogy. So my first job out of college, I worked for a company that manufactured torpedoes, right? Torpedo works something like this. You drop it in the water, and then it turns on, right? And it begins to make a circular pattern. I know, some of you have heard this story, but that's okay. Some of you haven't. And so what happens is the torpedo makes a circular pattern, and then the sonar system kicks in, right? It starts pinging. You hear that boom, boom? Well, what it is that the torpedo emits a sound into the environment. It then bounces off an object, and the torpedo receives that reflection, that bounced reflection, right? And what it's looking for is an outline of a submarine. So it ping, 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 and then it goes, I think the target sub is in that direction. So it moves, it pings, it gets something like a profile. Think of an outline. And then it needs to get closer because it needs more resolution. Moves in, gets closer and closer, says, underwater rock formation, not what I want. Breaks off the attack, goes back into its attack mode. Ping, 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 then it goes this way, it goes, I think I see it. And it moves in that direction, gets closer, ping, gets closer, defines the object, gets closer, school of fish, not what I want. Breaks off the attack again. It can go after a whale, but you don't want to hit a whale with a torpedo. That's overkill. So then it, again, starts the pattern all over again. Now, here's what's key, and here's why it matters to you. The torpedo has something called artificial intelligence. When it goes after something, and it isn't what it was looking for, it breaks off the attack, right? Now, does the torpedo say, I'm going home, I don't want to play anymore? Of course not. It went back into its pattern. But something internally happens to its algorithm, its programming. When it went after something, in this case, it turned out to be an underwater rock formation, and it wasn't what it wanted, it updated its programming. Okay, from now on, if it doesn't move, it's stationary, it's probably a rock, so let's not chase that anymore. And then when it went after this, there was a school of fish. It said, okay, if it moves, it changes different directions, it's probably not what we want. And then when it went after the whale, it says, if it looks like that, it's shaped like that, it's not what we want. And what's happening every time is the torpedo is getting smarter. Now, why does this matter to you? Because you're going to go after the sail for the first time. You're going to do your first presentation, right? Whether it's one-on-one, group environment. And guess what? You're not going to do so well sometimes, right? But what you're going to do is learn from that. Update your programming, right? You're going to learn, okay, what should I do? Okay, I did that right, I did that wrong. Let's not do that anymore, but let's keep doing that. And then you're going to try it again. And guess what? It may not go well, but that's okay, because you're going to what? Adapt. You're going to continue to update your programming. Basically, you're going to keep learning. It's an adaptive style of learning. That's what it is. It's all a process. Don't get frustrated with the process, because at the end of the day, it's all about a positive mental attitude. It will work. You have the tools, you have the process, you have a kit, and you have great people around you working for a great company with great products, great compensation plan. You can't go wrong. On that note, I'll close out. And again, I remind you that selling ain't hard when you know how, and I wish you the best in 2016. Take care.